This evening's Dharma talk is titled, I don't know, what's the title? What did I title it?
Enlightened by all things.
Enlightened by what?
By all things.
Really? Think that's going to work? Enlightened by all things. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. Dogen Zenji, the founder of this Soto Zen lineage, 13th century. What the hell did he mean by that? To study the self is to study the Dharma, return to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and practice shikantaza, practice zazen, practice training your mind to see clearly what is on the move, what is showing up, what is going away, to observe that. Get to know ourselves pretty well. You spend a few thousand hours looking at a wall. There's nothing happening and nobody to bitch at. Pardon me. And no one to listen to you. Get to know yourself pretty well. To study the self, to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened, enlightened by all things. Everything is telling you what you are, what this is. This may not show up right away. It may take many years of practice, but just don't give up. Intend to see the truth. What else are you going to do with your life? Go in circles somewhere else, you could. Intending to see who you are and what this is, using the teachings of the Buddha and of Buddhist masters down through the centuries that we amazingly still have access to, will help us clarify what this is, clarify this confusion that we're all experiencing on some level, in some way or another. Confusion about our emotions, conflicting emotions. I like this, but I don't know if I should do that, or part of me feels this way, part of me feels, we quite often hear ourselves say that, or others. And it's not deliberate confusion, it's just kind of a description of how it feels to be confused and believe that there is someone who is confused, or that there's someone who's got it together, someone who knows what's going on. Study the self is to forget the self. So it's not exactly forgetting the self. It's to study the self is to see the nature of the grasping quality of consciousness, the shoving, bullying, pushing, aggressive, angry aspect of consciousness. And also to notice that consciousness can just either fundamentally close off, or it can close off by distraction into other. Something is arising that really is coming towards you, therefore it requires your attention. And because that is sparking or triggering things in your mind stream that you don't like, you're pretty fussy. And so we distract ourselves or turn away or change the subject, change the channel. Whoops, got to go, get right out of there. Don't listen to that, look at that, receive that anymore. And to just receive doesn't mean to be cruel to yourself. It doesn't mean to overdose on something. It can be done gradually, just needs to be persistent. Return. Don't give up. One simple way of giving up is just believing your thoughts about anything. Thoughts are relatively true, but they're fundamentally untrue. And even if you know that and are aware of that, you still may not be aware how much that's manipulating you to go this way or that way. What you're looking at, this is why there's so many metaphors or images like mirrors in the Buddha's Dharma. What you're looking at is like a mirror. Doesn't mean it's going to look like you, but if you look at what is in front of you or who is in front of you without adding, judging them, without subtracting, judging them, or without ignoring them, judging them, or labeling them, or naming them, or explaining them, or doing anything with them at all other than just receive, that can be very distasteful, because what you are, the beginning of what you are receiving is your own projection. And that's when you begin to see that what you just thought was in front of you was actually your mind. And that we were projecting onto that. Does everybody feel sufficiently scolded? Or so what I'm saying is continue to return to the cushion, return to the wall, return to the practice, return to whatever concepts in the Buddhist extremely large teachings down through the centuries. Find something in there that seems to support or help support your particular understanding of the path, or your particular understanding of the way in which you're involved in passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear, pride, and envy. Just there's something in there probably. It might be in one of the 59 slogans of Atisha, or it might be one of the precepts, the Zen precepts, the 16 precepts, or maybe somewhere else that I don't even know about. Maybe a part of the teachings that are somewhere else altogether. So what you're looking at when it says to be awakened or enlightened by all things, it just means that everything, if you see what it is telling you. In ancient times, one of the sayings was that everything is preaching the dharma. Everything you see is a sermon on the Buddhist teachings. It's an odd way to say it, but it's like that. The very thing you're fighting with, objecting to, pushing away, is, in essence, is the truth. Not the item itself, but you may receive it that way. You may begin to see it that way. That's why it is necessary, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm very biased in this area. I'm not saying this can't be done on your own by studying Dogen Zenji. A lot of people spend their whole life reading those books with not too much practice. But that's why it's necessary to have a teacher that will not mislead you. You may think the way that teacher is functioning is unkind or unfair or confused or any number of things. But if you have found a true teacher, then whatever that teacher says or does is a teaching. I'm not saying everything they do is going to be legal necessarily. I'm not talking about some kind of relative situation in the world to do with laws and convention and culture, and might be way outside of that. But if that person is your teacher, you can take your craziness, your neurosis, if you feel like you have that at all, to them. But you can't go there part way. You have to, this doesn't mean you have a confession, but you have to bring your awareness, your vulnerability in front of that teacher. If you go halfway, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's all that's necessary for you to do. I don't know. So I've been sitting here, I walked in here with quite a bit of difficulty because I have back trouble. And, but apparently it seems like as soon as I start to teach, it stops. I get to teach. When I walk out of here, I'm going to probably have lightning bolts up my butt. Well, my back, sorry.
Shiazan bowing. Could you say what halfway and all the way are bowing?
Halfway as you have completely surrendered. You're a word I rarely use because it's not something you can do. It's something that has occurred because of your attitude and your perseverance and your intention to see the truth. And if you have a teacher, then that teacher is the truth. That teacher really doesn't need you or need anyone. But you may need a teacher if you're on this path, especially if you're wearing robes. But even if you are lay ordained, or even if you're not ordained and will never get ordained, and you have an interest in this path, you may have to give the benefit of the doubt to somebody. It has to be all the way, because very easy to back up and start to judge people around you, especially your teacher. Very difficult area. More?
Shiazan bowing, it seems at the beginning seeing some of our self-deception is easy because it's more apparent, but as it becomes more subtle, it can be difficult to relinquish that reference point. How do we not settle for good enough, or I'm feeling a little better bowing?
I think the continuing to return to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha as a form of whether you're ordained or not, if you're just practicing that, and then a lot of sitting meditation, a lot of sitting down, holding still, and observing the craziness, the insanity, the circularity, the busyness, the pettiness of the mind. Ego is very petty. So it's a matter of continuing and return to that over and over and over again. You may need to do prostrations, you may not. I don't require any of that particularly, but you may need to do something like that. That's why these teachings have down through the centuries show up lots of different ways. They used to circumambulate the Buddha and then bow down and be seated. That's not something we're doing or going to do. But different kinds of forms show up in different ways in different cultures. And here we are in a Western culture in the United States, in Michigan, no less. And we're talking about something that began 2,500 years ago, showed up in Japan, and showed up in Tibet. And a person came from each direction to teach in this country, and I met both of them. More?
Geez, I'm bowing, not yet. Thank you.
Certainly. Further questions, please, if you have them.
Soto bowing. In that line, forget the self, is there another word that you might use for forget that would capture his intention better?
Yeah, you'd almost have to go back to see the translation to see how he was saying that, and somebody has decided that would be the word word to use in that place, but I don't know. What do you think?
Sure about it. I just know when I see the word forget, I think kind of like ignore. So it doesn't feel like that's what I don't think Dogen's encouraging me to ignore something.
The way I would, now that you've said that, now I will respond to it this way. Put others before yourself. You don't have to worry about the self. So just forget the self, put others before yourself. Forget the self, put others before yourself. Forget the self, put others before yourself. Forget the self. Get it? I translated that for you. Put others first. And how do we do that? We notice how we are very petty, and when something doesn't go our way, suddenly we forget everybody. And we suddenly start thinking of me and my feelings and my emotions and how I feel and how I think and what somebody has said and what I'm not getting acknowledged for. Petty, just petty stuff. And we're not talking about fixing that or stopping that. I'm talking about, just observe that. If you abandon what is showing up as petty mind, or if you abandon or turn away from it, or try to artificially stop it so you get to be a better person, a person who doesn't have those kind of petty thoughts, that's more confusion, and it's more spiritual materialism. So the way you would work with that pettiness is just remember others, remember those who are suffering all around you and in the world, and also the thought forms that are rising in your own mind. Don't do anything with them. Don't push them down, don't fluff them up, and don't ignore them. More?
Shadow bowing. When I endeavor to put other people before myself, it still seems like the self-centeredness can get some kind of credential out of that. If we're putting others before ourselves, can the ego still usurp that? Or
Yes, well said. It can, and the only thing you need to do there is just observe the way you get a credential for it. Observe. It's not about. It is about not getting credentials, but the way we do that is to observe the way we keep reaching out for some kind of proof of something. I'm doing this and doing that, and there's proof that I have a credential for that. I'm doing that. I'm the one who knows. I'm the one who succeeds. Don't you do that a little bit? Just observe it. Don't. When I say don't improve, I'm not saying you aren't going to improve, but when we have an activity of trying to improve, like Western understanding of education is to get some kind of credential out of everything. And it's not that that's incorrect or wrong, or we shouldn't have it, or we don't need something like that. Sometimes there's a lot made out of that actually gets in the way of an education with more depth to it, not just a credential situation, but something that goes much deeper than that. More. So you may improve. It may be some kind of a contrast. But when it does happen, you won't care for a credential there, because you'll spend time looking at your own mind stream, which is full of lies and full of untruths and full of self-deception, and you won't push it away. You won't explain it or justify it. You won't blame anybody for it, and you won't ignore it, and it will come apart, because it only can stay together through pushing, pulling, the three poisons. Don't go to war with anything, and don't go to peace with anything. Just observe. More?
Shadow bowing. An area that's coming up for me is in communication, and I'm thinking if I might have to meet with a painter or a contractor, I might have to talk about something we've done here, and I might have to say, like, I did this, which I feel misses all of the other people that have helped out with something. So
Yes.
Is there anything to do with just the way our language works around that?
Just all you have to, it's a wonderful, it's kind of a dharma gate for you. Then you can see the way you're on the edge of bragging about yourself. But you don't have to stop that. Manipulating that so you're not that kind of person, that just reinforces the whole self-centeredness of the mind, which which just uplifts some kind of false self, more ego, just more subtle, more. Sometimes we'll meet people who are so holy it makes you sick, because it's all about how holy they are. It's not about actually being sacred. It's about separating himself into a special person. The Bodhisattva is not a special person. The Bodhisattva is nobody. The Buddha is nobody, fundamentally. Go ahead.
Sure. Can we have those credentials come up and that credit come up and not become someone special out of it?
Yes. Yeah. Just wow. Just observe. And when that's coming up, the ego area of the mind gets sickened by its own grasping, and so wants to not be that way. So, but all you have to do is just not mind being sick. So that way you actually are what you're trying to get rid of, instead of separating yourself into somebody who doesn't want to be that way, somebody who wants to be this or that. That way you actually are that. And if you are that, then this is where the observer and the observed start to merge. And it can be excruciating for ego. Not only excruciating, it can be terrifying for some people. It depends on the way in which you manage to hide out from yourself. And some people may practice meditation for 10 or 15 years and finally start to get a glimpse of how hard this is going to be and just back right up, and they might still practice, but they're not really practicing anymore. They're trying to maintain themselves a little, so they're kind of more clear on things, but they haven't gone. I don't want to get new. They do not want to get too near to the cliff, which they can see is just over there. Not everyone, but most people. You know who you are. I know who I am. I couldn't teach this if I didn't look at it or have it show up in my own live stream. Further questions? Sure.
How do I bring my neurosis to the teacher?
You already do it. That's absolutely sickening. You do. I'm being silly, but you do. You're genuine. You bring your understanding. You bring that to me anytime we meet. I feel like you're already doing that. I'm not saying you are going to get some kind of credential out of it. Everyone is functioning so differently in terms of their particular karma, or what's really, really difficult for you. Someone else might even listen to that or look at that and think it's a big deal. Whereas you might look at somebody else's situation and think, wow, why are they having such difficulty with that? That seems like that shouldn't be a problem to them at all. So, but what is showing up here is not just what's happening right here in this lifetime. We're bringing a whole trainload of causes and conditions. It's called karma, and it's been coming this direction for centuries, which is an understatement. So far, my back is letting me teach or talk anyway. I don't know if I'm teaching or not. Maybe not.
When you're bowing. So to be enlightened by all things, does that mean that anything we look at is the opportunity for enlightenment?
Everything you look at is enlightenment. Everything you see is a Buddha.
When you're bowing, is that a something we should remind ourselves of?
You could. That's what the slogans are for. It teaches 59 slogans. A lot of those slogans don't make any sense to me, but there's some of them that are really interesting and I think would be very helpful. And some of them are complicated. So you could use a slogan. The one that I've talked about before is one you can say is when you're full of complaints and being upset about everything and everybody and what's happening to you, you can just reverse it. Just use the words. If you have the intention to reverse it, you can actually use words. You can say, and your body, bring it together, bring this, everything that's separate together. Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever. And mean it. And of course, that means to lie. I mean, how else could you do it? Your ego mind doesn't really feel that way at all, but you just do it anyway because you're on a path of transcendence, not in a path of agreement. You're going to transcend this. If you're listening to this Dharma talk, causes and conditions are lined up in such a way that you need to hear this. You don't have to be a student of mine. You don't have to ever have to listen to me again. But you might want to remember that. Everywhere you look is Buddha. Live in enlightenment. That means include everything, include all of your neurosis. But you can't include something if you've got it shut out, you don't exactly know what it is. And if you try to include something that is shut out, you take a look and say, I think I'll just leave that where it's at for a while. I don't think I really want to look at that and feel too comfortable. And besides, the teacher doesn't know about that. So I could probably, he's pretty old, so I could probably just practice and practice. And he never will see that aspect of my ego. So realize this is your opportunity. What an incredible opportunity for all of us to be in a country where this is might be taught somewhere, but where we as a community get together. Everyone here is, there isn't anyone here who is totally new that I can see anyway, maybe. But we all get together and work together and study together and communicate, cooperate, collaborate, help each other study this amazing Buddha's Dharma. It's called Sangha. Further question?
Onabowing, when you say everything is the Buddha, are you saying everything is our teacher?
Everything is teaching you, everything is awake, everything, yes, it's complete. It's ultimate truth. Yes.
Onabowing, how do we see everything is awake?
Just watch everything that's asleep, that you think is asleep. Watch everything you think is some separate thing that doesn't know anything, that's dead. Or it's just a bench or just an old tree. Look closely. Look closely.
Onabowing, what does awake look like?
Looks like it's not sleeping. It's awake. It's realized. It's awake. It's not separating itself from anything. It's like the first finger knows about the little finger, is not jealous of it. Not separate.
Onabowing, how is that not sleeping?
Because it's not sleeping. Because nothing is covered up. Nothing is hidden. So on top of that, I would have to say, as we all know, that we're using relative words to describe something that is impossible to describe. But one who has seen this is probably going to be interested in talking about this in some way, and will see if they can encourage you if they have a student. Anyone in the arts, artists of all kinds, professional people may try to look for ultimate truth somehow, in some way, trying to use if they can put together something that will evoke something beyond itself or something greater than itself.
Onabowing, I'm wondering what we can do to appreciate. Is that the same thing as seeing awake or not sleeping?
I think that appreciation is something we should do with everything, no matter what it is. It means to receive whatever it is without any kind of resistance in terms of a commentary or a judgment or an evaluation based on just what shows up, to not immediately judge it or push it away or shut it down or even accept it. And don't ignore it. Think about it a moment. Something comes up that you've never seen before. And you don't do anything with it other than look at it, smell it, taste it, touch it, listen to it, think about it. Just receive that as it is, just as it is, rather than bind to some kind of trigger that causes you to go somewhere else or causes you to fight against that because you don't know what that is. Maybe this shouldn't be allowed to be here. What if this is going to threaten us? Well,
So then on the path, what we're doing is really looking at our projections. And so
Yes.
we're looking.
and you're always looking at the truth, but it just might be covered up by a lot of things. So that's why I say, look, it's right in front of you. If you look at what's right in front of you, for instance, the wall, long enough, you'll eventually see.
Are our projections the Buddha?
Yes. Everything is the Buddha. Everything is not separate. You will see dependent origination as it is. It's not a bunch of separate things all connected. It's not separate. So it isn't separate things. Therefore, everywhere you see, everything you look at is not separate from anything else, nor is it the same. It's that area of that structure of concepts right there you start to work with that back and forth and try to find out what is ultimately being said there. It's hard to see that and draw some kind of a conclusion without leaving the ultimate and lowering yourself down into, not a bad place, just a different area, down into relative conclusions or opinions or ideas or contractions or conclusions. Not wrong. It's the way the world works. Materialism works. But this is a spiritual path. So it's not about success. It's about seeing the truth. It's like Meister Eckhart said in the 13th century, sometime before they probably immolated him for heresy. He said, God went that way and truth went that way. I could let God go and follow the truth. This is a monk in the 13th century, had that kind of insight. Unusual. At least that's the way it was reported. Yes, sir. Go ahead first.
It seems like often what arises in response to what's in front of me is warfare. I'm wondering how that is enlightening.
Because it's not separate from anything else. It's just showing up that way. So, but you may be taking that personal and trying to stop that warfare or join that warfare, or you may be part of that warfare. And it's just energy that's been personalized. It's just energy is everywhere. And when there's somebody going somewhere with some kind of an agenda about it, then the energy that's there becomes warlike. So all you have to do is be aware of that. It doesn't mean that if you're aware of it, you're going to fight with it, you're going to stop the war, like trying to stop the insane progression of causes and conditions that lead up to any of the wars that have gone on or the ones that are going on now. You can't go in and just stop it. If you're going to stop war, you need to start where the wars start at, and that's in the human mind. That's where they start. Rather than go and out and beat up on the bully after the bully is already full grown and has a big club. More good area to ask about. I want to hear what I have to say too.
Did I understand you to say that the warfare comes out of ego? Is it also the case that that's just energy that's arising?
No, ego isn't real. That's why you don't have to get rid of it. When you see that the ego energy is just energy that has been usurped by narcissism and by fear, that there's no one there, no personhood there. If you see it, then you're liberated. It doesn't mean you can go out. You're going to go out and celebrate. You just see that you're seeing what no one else is seeing. And you can't even tell anybody about it because they have to see it themselves. So if you happen to function as a teacher, then maybe some people will listen to you and maybe be on your wavelength enough so that they will give you permission to tell them about it or to teach them. But ego is unreal. You don't have to get rid of anything. You do not have to improve. You just have to see the truth. And any improvement that happens may happen, but you won't get credit for it. You won't even say, I improved. You won't even say, I'm enlightened, necessarily. That's dependently risen too. You may say that in some situation. That may be the only thing you can say in response to someone. But the warfare, it's about awareness that actually sees the energy get personalized into somebody that's pissed off. And it can back it up by causes and conditions that we call blame or some kind of causation that's gone amiss. More good area. If you can ask the question, I can pretend to answer it. Go ahead, Maria.
Maria Bowing. What does it mean to know what something is? Bowing.
It's exactly the same as not knowing. You know what it is, and you don't know what it is. It's called transcendence. It's called non-dual. It's not a very workable way to talk about it, to use just a couple of ideas, concepts like knowing and not knowing and say they're not different, not separate. They're differentiated, but you're no longer picking and choosing based on some kind of relative value of good or bad. You're just not doing that anymore. So you may not do an awful lot.
Maria Bowing. So if you are not choosing anymore, so then are you including everything? Bowing?
If you realize you're not particularly including anything either, that's the path, is to include. The path of the enlightening being or the bodhisattva is to, whatever shows up in their path, they include it. They might not agree with it. And by include doesn't mean that they bring robbers and murderers into their house. They might include more locks on the doors. So it's about relating to something as it's actually showing up. And you actually get to see 15 people, all of which were robbers or were thieves or criminals and were locked up. And you actually get to see those people and realize that each one of those people came into that prison dependently risen with all kinds of different karma that brought them there. And they ran into a huge bulwark of insanity called the Michigan Department of Corrections, to name one of them, where they just take somebody who has somehow stepped outside of a form and put them in a box, lock them up, and feed them crap.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sokuzan bowing.
Go ahead, Sokuzan.
There's Kyoshin has a couple of questions in the chat box.
Go ahead. Read.
The first one is some of this about us awakening a little from something in nature, traffic, anything?
Something about something of us awakening in nature, traffic, anything?
Do you want me to reread it?
Might try one more time and I'll work on it. I'm pretty slow.
Is some of this about us awakening a little from something in nature, traffic, anything?
What do you want to know, Kyoshi? Give me a very straight, simple question about what you want to know.
Sokuzan bowing. He has a follow-up question, maybe that addresses it differently.
Okay, thank you.
Is the joy of those mini teachings just natural appreciation of the dharma / appreciative joy?
No. Not the way you're asking me. Appreciation is the path, not the goal. The goal is better than that, and it's worse than that. You guys are all going to just sit there and look at me, and I busted my butt to get in here and appear in front of you and you're going to not ask me any questions. I might as well go screaming out of here. Go ahead.
Ashan bowing. How does consciousness that can see through the mind's attachment to ego operate? Bowing.
Well, if it's not interfered with, if we just stop pushing, pulling, and doing any of the shenanigans that go on to try to get our way as somebody, then it eventually just wears out, because it's connected to dependent origination, which is showing up as this moving and that going this way and this going that way. Just observe that until the personhood starts to dissolve out of it. Because if you don't do anything with it, if you don't credit, you don't blame, and you don't ignore those three poisons, then the personhood that wants something and doesn't want that starts to come apart. You don't go anywhere. Your ears don't fall off, but you just notice that you don't really care what happens. This doesn't mean that you're ignoring animals who are being mistreated. It doesn't mean that you're ignoring what's happening in different parts of the world where people are being abused and tortured, or whether that's happening right in your own backyard or even in your family. But you may see it a lot more clearly than someone who's trying to go to war with it or trying to go to peace with it. Everybody should be peaceful. Or just saying, what problem? I really, that has nothing, it's none of my business. I don't have anything to do with that. Awareness, 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 awareness. Eventually the self, the self-centered part, or the narcissistic part of the awareness starts to come apart, because it is only held together by war and peace.
Ashan bowing. What is filterless awareness?
What is what? Filterless?
Filterless awareness without any filter.
Watch your step there now.
Yep.
What is filterless awareness when the filters are defilterized?
No.
I can't even trick you. What?
I guess
What do you want to know?
my ego immediately jumps to that consciousness is going to get overwhelmed because there's no filters. But then there's nothing to be overwhelmed because the ego is not real.
Sounds good to me.
So
What do you want to know about that?
how do I create a concept around something that doesn't have a filter? Bowing.
You don't need it. You don't need it, any more concepts. You have plenty of them. You don't need any more.
Where is the reference point, or bowing?
The reference point is whatever's arising. And that's going to look like something else until you see what it actually is. It's just a matter of continued return. The most I feel that the best thing I can say is just return, rather than going to some kind of conceptual understanding of it. Spend time on the cushion, which you already do. Spend more time there, reading and studying, relating to Sangha through the study of the Dharma. This is important to do this. Is there a question in the chat box? I saw something show up.
Yoguro bowing. There are several questions in the chat box. There's one from Todd E. He says, is there a goal?
Well, there's several, but there's the goal to end suffering. And there's the goal to realize your true nature, realize what this self and other really is, to realize what this is, to end suffering, save all beings, protect others. And I'll say more about it, but that's close.
Gyokuro bowing. There's a question from Sarah, actually two from Sarah. Sarah bowing, how do you work with the uncomfortable textures certain people bring you? Bowing.
If it's really overwhelming, then it depends on if your life partner, then it's pretty difficult. But if it's in your family where you can't really keep some distance there, or job situation, but keep the contact to a minimum. But when you are in contact, receive as much as you can without adding any judgment or without adding anything to it, if you can. But if you do add, then just receive that, and then limit your time so that you don't get too overwhelmed by that that difficult or uncomfortableness that is happening. So instead of spending an hour with a person, after 10, 15 minutes, look at your watch and not a digital watch. Don't look at those. Look at a analog watch, and then, oops, gotta go. Get out of there. They're not really abandoning them. Because while you were there, you're doing the best you could to receive them and listen to them, and receive whatever texture it was you were calling a difficult, referred to as a texture. It's a good word, useful. It says something, but it doesn't really judge anything particularly. So it sounds like you're doing fine. Just keep your contact with that individual person to a minimum if you can. And that way, while you are with them, you're pretty genuine. You're just being with them and listening to them, and you're being respectful to their confusion. It's very important to respect people's confusion, not to jump in the middle of it and point out their mistakes.
Gyokuro bowing. Her next question, and then there's one from Larry. But Sarah's next question is, Sarah bowing, how does one tap into compassion when dealing with another person who isn't compassionate? Bowing.
Well, it's to give a general response to it. I would say keep it to a minimum. Your contact with them, so that when you are with them, you can beyond receive. The compassion won't show up as a feeling. If you're looking for some kind of feeling, you're trying to give them, show them how compassionate you are. That's not compassion. That's ego. But if you actually truly want to be compassionate, then receive the person's negativity. You won't get burned. Receive it. It's much better to do this kind of receiving than the kind that is traditionally called Tonglen, where we're sending and receiving while riding the breath. I don't teach that, even though I practiced it for decades. What I do teach is, when somebody comes to you with their negativity, respect the negativity. The negativity is very powerful. Someone's confused thought patterns, or they've had them tied up for maybe long periods of time. If you just observe those, and of course, as I often say, if you're always a student, then everything is a teaching. If you look at that situation with that person, you're looking at the Buddha Dharma right there. Because life is suffering, and that person is showing you how they're probably, I don't know this for sure because I don't know the person you're talking about, but probably is showing you the way they avoid their suffering by torturing you. But if you can see that, then you can see that they're suffering. That's why they're acting in a way that doesn't smell too good, perhaps. So I would say don't overdose on it, but receive a little bit of that, Be polite, be respectful to them. Or if it's really horrible, then just stay away from them altogether. You have no, there's no requirement to, they say save all beings. They're not saying you have to go to the worst person on the block and save them or meet them where they're at. Just go slow. Again, compassion is not a feeling. That's more like sympathy or feeling sorry for someone or seeing someone that's not as well off as you are, feeling sorry or even sad about their plight. But compassion is not necessarily an emotion. It might have emotional qualities to it, but the basic force of compassion is wisdom on the move. But it's wisdom. It doesn't see anything else. And again, I'll say, like I say, just about every time I give a talk, don't believe anything I say. And don't disbelieve it. Just, if you listen to it, it's being offered. Nice to see you, Sarah.
Go bowing. Question from Larry. Larry Bowing. Does dependent origination mean that there is fate? Bowing.
That there is fate? Fate?
Yes.
No. Fate is a word that people who are hooked on and attached to cause and effect, and right and wrong, and up and down, back and forth, and life and death. That's what they call. That's what they name that. If it's like it was your karma to get this, or have it, you're fated to have this happen. That's a big misunderstanding. Nothing is fated, and nothing. You could take it the other way and say, nor is anything not fated. It's even worse. You're not going to get any handle on it. I'm certainly not going to help you. I'm one of the greatest scientists who's ever lived. No, wait a minute. That was another lifetime. Actually, I can't even think in a straight line. But I know people who can, and that's how I managed to get my taxes done. No, you do the taxes, don't you? Yeah. Unya does the taxes. So there. Should we pull into the station, or is there another question? Yes, sir.
You'll sometimes say to start with the teacher in various scenarios. I wonder if there's any quality of saving all beings in relating to the teacher.
Well, I think it's different for with each person, but it's important to give the teacher the benefit of the doubt, if not fully trust them, but at least give them the benefit of the doubt on things. When you see something that they're saying or doing or that you don't understand, then you should bring it to them if you can. Unless they've got 15,000 students, but bring it to them and say, "What? I'm watching this and this. What about that? What's happening there?" So, in other words, interact. Is that where you're headed with that, or is there something else?
Saving all beings has some quality of relating to confusion to me, and I'm wondering how that could apply if that doesn't particularly show up in the teacher.
Like, how do you save the teacher?
Yeah.
Easy to make a joke here. Should I, or should I just say something really sincere, honest, and genuine? Holy. I don't know. What is it you want to know?
How do I practice saving all beings?
See, well, the starting of that, as you already know, is to see the way you get sucked up in your own feelings and forget all beings. Is to watch how much you do that. Watch the petty mind that actually leaves all beings in the dust over and over and over again. And eventually the vow, I can't guarantee you anything, but the vow that you received, eventually it continue to practice and it will take over. And you will no longer make any choices about anything other than save all beings, put others before yourself. Even though they might not think you're doing that, still you do it anyway, because you're not looking for credit. Does that smile mean you understood what I said, or did you think what I said was funny? You have to watch, simply put, in any situation, in awareness practice, you're going to have to watch, observe, see, smell, taste, touch, think, a lot of negativity without pushing it away, without validating or justifying it, and without distracting yourself from it or shutting it down. You have to look at a lot of that before eventually you see what that has been covering up. That has been covering up your enlightened nature, your Buddha nature, your true nature, that nature which does not appear, therefore it can't disappear. Body mind comes up, it's going to die sooner or later. Compounded things all vanish eventually, but your true nature, your Buddha nature is not compounded, and it can be realized. Very good. Everyone should go and memorize the 30 verses of Asabandhu before tomorrow. I don't know how I got through this without being upset with my back. Oh, and then, hold on a minute. Is Young, are you here? Thank you for the coffee cup that says, what does it say? The coffee cup?
81.
So, awesome.
Awesome.
So it's awesome 81 on it. And I know you got the numbers wrong. It should be 18. Awesome 18 when I was 18 a while back. Thank you very much for that anyway.
May this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san chi shi hu shi son bu sa moko sa moko ho ja ho mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.
All of you, thank you for joining us. And I hope you're all going to get a good night's sleep.